And joining us now for more is former Assistant Secretary of Counterterrorism at the Department of Homeland Security, Elizabeth Neumann. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us. Take us behind the scenes here. The president convening his top officials in the Situation Room, briefing the American people. What do you think is happening at the Department of Homeland Security right now?
Well, the Department of Homeland Security has the Secret Service that's part of its components, and they're actively preparing for Milwaukee. The president gave direction to do a comprehensive review of the plan for Milwaukee, and so you're going to have all hands on deck working over the weekend and around the clock to make sure everybody is comfortable with that security plan and that no changes need to be made. Now, that plan has been in the works for 2 years, and you have multiple law enforcement agencies at federal, state, and local levels all coming together to provide security. So I feel quite confident, as it is a national special security event, and the Department of Homeland Security has a tremendous experience pulling those types of events off, that they are probably in a much stronger position to provide security than, say, a small rally like we saw this weekend. Nevertheless, after an event like that, you always worry about copycat, people that might be inspired to try to do something, seeing that somebody had a minor success, maybe they could have more success. So it certainly increases the threat. And if you're at the Department of Homeland Security, you have a no-fail mission. And so you are doubling your efforts to try to make sure that it is a safe and secure week.
What was your reaction when you heard about this yesterday? Were you surprised?
I was not surprised. We have been warning about threats of political violence for 3 or 4 years now, and certainly this year, all of those threats have escalated. We've been talking about the potential for political assassination to become, unfortunately, a norm. You might recall that the former Prime Minister of Japan was assassinated a couple of years ago. We've seen this occur elsewhere in the world, in the globe, and certainly in the counterterrorism and the national security community. We have been quite concerned that assassination, which was a tool that was unfortunately quite prevalent in our history 100 years ago, we were very concerned that it might make a comeback, and it certainly appears to have been attempted in what we saw over the weekend.
And what can you tell us about this kind of political violence and how it develops?
Look, the reason behind why somebody mobilizes to violence is often not the ideology, which is what we mostly fixate on. Like, what's the motive? And we talk about that ideological motive. And certainly when you target a presidential candidate, former president, it certainly seems political, right? But what we know about people that commit attacks like this is that it's actually underlying psychosocial drivers. It's not the ideology. These individuals usually had some sort of life crisis in their background. They often have had some mental health issues, not necessarily an illness, although sometimes we do see that, but some sort of crisis that they didn't have the coping skills to deal with. And then what we also know is that individuals that have committed targeted attacks in the past often are radicalizing online. They're finding belonging in communities online that glorify mass shootings, that find their significance in carrying out an act like this, and they find that that's inspiring to them. So very often it is not necessarily the particular ideology, an extremist ideology or political motive, but rather something that has gone wrong in that person's life, and they see this as their only solution. It's very tragic, and certainly not an answer that we, the public, want. But maybe the positive note to this is when something is not just purely about ideology, but these underlying psychosocial drivers, it actually means we know how to prevent it, we know how to stop it, and so. Given the threat environment that we're in right now, I'd encourage all viewers that if there's somebody in your life that's showing concerning signs, that is talking about violence or talking in a way that concerns you, please don't brush that aside. Please get that person help or call law enforcement. It is usually a close associate that notices something is wrong. And when we stop attacks, it's because that close associate speaks out. So if you have somebody in your life that's concerning you, don't brush it aside.
And Elizabeth, just one more before I let you go. One thing that I thought was interesting, you said you were not shocked. I think that on one hand, I understand that, but on the other, a number of people are thinking, look, this is the Secret Service. This is as good as it gets when you're talking about protection. And so it would seem that they've prepared for every kind of contingency. And would you say that the resources are not adequate at this time?
The Secret Service has a no-fail mission, and it's one of the toughest jobs out there, especially in a venue like where they were operating. So I was certainly disheartened at the security failure, and we don't exactly know all aspects of what actually failed. But they have a very difficult job when you're in an open environment like that. And yes, I mean, the resources are limited. We don't have enough Secret Service professionals. Every year we go through an election year, they are exhausted and end up very strained and stretched thin because we have to deploy them in so many places. They are the best of the best, but they are limited by their resources. And so maybe this is a time to have that conversation that we need to be able to increase their capacity to be able to provide more protection in events like this.
Elizabeth Neumann, super helpful insight. We thank you so much for your time.